It's December 5th, 2020. I'm Nick Black, and this is episode 8 of the Nick Black Podcast. I'm going to talk about a few random things today, as is my nature. First and foremost, Notre Dame, in their first season in the ACC, wrapped up a perfect 10-0 record, a spot in the ACC championship game, and quarterback Ian Book just became the school's all-time winningest quarterback at 30 wins. That's more wins than Brady Quinn, Joe Montana, Joe Theismann, Daryle Lamonica. No quarterback in the famed history of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish has won more games as a starter than Ian Book. The fact that he accomplished this task in his final regular season home game is just a little poetic, don't you think? They beat Syracuse 45-21, which isn't a shock to anyone. Syracuse finishes the season. Or do they play another game next week? See, it's confusing with the NCAA season as it is. Not everyone's playing the exact same schedule, the exact same amount of games, because some games have been canceled due to the pandemic. So I don't know if this is Syracuse's last game, but the point is Syracuse has only won a single game this entire season. And I don't think anyone thought today was going to be their second win. I mean, maybe they did, but I don't think anyone else expected that. Although I'm going to tell you, the first half was a little scary. Notre Dame would not see the end zone until pretty much the end of the half. And for a while, it was looking like it was just going to be one of those games, not terribly unlike this past Sunday's Raiders-Falcons game. Part of me was legit scared I was going to have to go through that again. But my fears were unfounded. Notre Dame won decisively. So much so that Notre Dame's all-time winningest quarterback earned himself a little bit of a break in the final minutes of the game. Well-deserved. He had done plenty. Over 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, but it was only his second interception of the year, so that really doesn't matter. Pretty good chunk of rushing yards, including what I thought was 2 rushing touchdowns, but according to the stat sheet I just looked at right now, 0 rushing touchdowns. But I swear, and I got the game recorded, I could easily watch it again, and I probably will later, but I swear I saw him run into the end zone twice today. But maybe this is just a bit of a Mandela effect. I don't know. But I'm pretty excited about this. I've been a Notre Dame fan my entire life. They've always been independent. They've never belonged to any conference. Therefore, they've never been eligible for a conference championship game. But because of the pandemic, they joined the ACC for this season, and my understanding is only this season. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think it'd be pretty cool if they became a permanent member of the ACC. I don't see it happening, but that ACC logo looks pretty sweet on their jerseys and on their helmets. But in their first season in the ACC, perfect record, and they're playing either Clemson, most likely, in a rematch, or Miami, depending on how tonight's, actually it's on right now, I'm not watching it because I'm recording it, but Clemson is playing Virginia Tech, I think, right now. If they win this game, they are playing Notre Dame in the ACC championship. If they lose and then Miami wins their next 2 games, Miami is playing Notre Dame in the ACC championship. But it's going to be Clemson, guys. I think it would take a miracle for Clemson to lose. But I'm pretty excited. We all know it's been quite a rough year for everyone. So all these little victories that you can get is a big deal, and this is a big deal to me. So I'm pretty happy. And we got some movie stuff I want to talk about, guys. Peter Dinklage has been cast in a remake of The Toxic Avenger. For those of you who are not familiar, The Toxic Avenger is a 1984 low-budget film produced by low-budget filmmakers extraordinaires Troma Pictures about a janitor at a gym. A very tragic figure, let's just say, whom is humiliated and accidentally falls into a vat of toxic chemicals, transforming himself into a deformed but powerful superhero known as the Toxic Avenger. Now, I'm pretty sure I've told my Toxic Avenger story on here before. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I did that somewhere else. But anyway, if I already have told the story, I apologize. If I had and you just haven't heard it, then cool, you're hearing it for the first time. If you've heard this before, just bear with me. But so I first was introduced to the Toxic Avenger as a child. When I was 6, ABC debuted a Saturday morning cartoon. You guys remember Saturday morning cartoons? If you're a little too young, you might not remember because they don't really exist anymore. But my generation, we lived for Saturday morning. Like my entire week revolved around Saturday morning programming, man. I even had a specific schedule. I would bounce around from channel to channel depending on what was on. Because I know a lot of people had their favorites. Like, you know, some people, their favorite might have been Fox. Someone might have been ABC, CBS. I don't think anyone's was NBC because they switched to teenage live-action programming pretty much around the time Saved by the Bell became a hit. Kind of abandoned cartoons. But, see, for me, I didn't have a favorite channel. I had favorite shows. And that would change from year to year as the schedule would change. But basically, my go-tos for sure as a child were, when NBC still did cartoons, Wish Kid, starring Macaulay Culkin, Garfield and Friends on CBS, Pee-wee's Playhouse, and the Ernest, I think it was called Hey Vern, It's Ernest, the Ernest P. Worrell show on CBS. On Fox, I think everyone would agree that probably the greatest Saturday morning cartoon of all time was Fox's X-Men the Animated Series. And Fox, if you put a gun to my head and made me choose which one of the networks was my favorite, I would definitely say it's Fox because I think they overall had the better roster. They had, at different times, Tasmania, which, if you're not familiar with that, it literally was a cartoon about the Tasmanian devil and his family, and it was awesome. Super Dave Osborne's Super Show, which was a cartoon version of the character Super Dave Osborne, stuntman. Pirates of Darkwater was really cool. There was a Peter Pan cartoon that I liked a lot. The Spider-Man cartoon on Fox. I can go on, and actually I think I would rather continue my discussion in an entire episode because it really deserves a full discussion. One of the greatest times in my life, to be honest with you. Saturday morning cartoons, man. But anyway, about 1990 or 91, ABC debuted The Toxic Crusaders, which was a children's cartoon adaptation of the film The Toxic Avenger, and gave a couple of teammates to Toxie so he can fight the bad guys. And that was my introduction to this character, to this franchise. Again, it was a Saturday morning children's cartoon. Not too long after, I'm browsing the aisles at my local video store, which was called ComSource. Because video stores all had names like that, right? You know, it was COMM-Source, SOURCE. But like, you know, they always had those weird names like ComSource, FlickStop, FlickSource, stuff like that, right? I can probably dive into that in another episode too. But as I'm browsing the aisles, I see Toxie on the front of a box. It says Toxic Avenger. And I picked it up and looked at the back because that's what you did back then. You would pick it up and you look at the back because the back would have information. It would have some screenshots and it might have some text about describing the plot of the movie. It might even have some blurbs from a review. And which I'm going to sidetrack myself again. That was normal for like videos, right? Either VHSs back in the day, DVDs, Blu-rays still. So, when you're at the store and you're looking at a video game or you're looking at a movie, it's normal to take it and look at the back. For those of you who know, up until recently, I spent the past 14 years working behind the counter at a comic book store. Comic books, traditionally and regularly, are kept in what we call a bag and a board. That is a poly bag, a transparent poly bag, with more often than not a white piece of cardboard that is not transparent. And comic books are kept in these bags and boards to where the front cover is visible, but nothing else is. Again, the lack of transparency with the cardboard, which is almost always visible to some degree when you're looking at a bagged and boarded comic book, right? So the idea being, you can see the front cover through the transparent poly bag, and you can see, more often than not, the white cardboard behind it. And yet, on a regular basis, I would see people pick up a comic book that was bagged and boarded, stare at the front cover for a little bit, and then flip it over to the back and just stare at a blank piece of white, sometimes gray cardboard, depending on the type of cardboard you use to back your comics. And initially I can understand the confusion because, you're used to looking at, movies. Or sometimes maybe a book. You might look at a novel and you flip it over and there's some information on the back. Again, same kind of thing. You might have a description of the plot, some information on the author, a blurb or two from a review. But when you're at a store, if a novel is in some way, shape, or form wrapped, it's usually in like clear cellophane that's been heat wrapped, right? Heat sealed. It doesn't usually have a piece of cardboard blocking or obstructing the view of anything. But most often than not, books aren't usually sealed. Comic books are, though. I mean, not when they arrive in comic book stores. That's another misconception. People always think that they arrive in the shop in bags and boards. No, every single shop out there has to buy the bags and the boards individually. Put the boards inside of the bags and then put the comic books they get inside of those and then tape them down themselves. So you also have to buy tape as well. They don't ship out. Marvel and DC don't send comics to the distributors bagged and boarded. They send them completely bare, like a magazine on a grocery store newsstand. And the distributors don't send them out to comic book shops bagged and boarded either. They send them out the exact same fashion they received them, which is completely bare, naked, in their birthday suits. It's the individual comic book shops that take the time to purchase these supplies and then bag and board the comics themselves. I always hated when people would complain to me that we charge for bags of boards. Well, we had to buy them, Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I can understand you've never been in a comic book store before. You're used to taking something, looking at the cover for a bit, and flipping it over to see if there's more information on the back. But I'm not talking about people would take that, flip it over to the back, see the white cardboard and go, oh, my bad, and then flip it back over. They would stare. When they would do this, they would stare at the white cardboard for a while as if they were expecting something to just magically appear. Long enough to definitely make me scratch my head and go, what the fuck? I'm getting way off topic here. Sorry. Toxic Avenger, right? I, as a child, as a 6-year-old, have discovered there is a live-action movie based on this cartoon that I just fell in love with. So I rented it. Now, back in the 90s, people really didn't care about ratings, right? As a kid, I would buy tickets to R-rated movies. No one ever cared. I would rent R-rated movies from the video rental store. Nobody cared. I actually wouldn't get carded for the first time until I saw Kill Bill Volume 2. I was 20 years old when that came out. First time in my life I ever went to go buy a movie ticket. Someone asked for my ID because it was rated R. So I rent The Toxic Avenger, completely oblivious to the fact that it's rated R because I didn't check, and at the time I thought, why wouldn't it be? This is a Saturday morning kids cartoon show, right? And so, back in the day, I'm old enough to the point where I remember when people still had just one TV and maybe one VCR in their houses. Like in my house as a child, we had one TV in the living room, and then my parents had a TV in their bedroom. Albeit it was a smaller TV than what we had in the living room. And the only VCR in the house was the one in the living room. That's where we'd watch movies. And it wasn't uncommon for me to have the living room by myself during the daytime, right? Especially if school wasn't in session. Most of the adults in my house worked. So I was just kind of like left to my own devices at home during the day watching TV. I was more or less raised by television, actually. So I'm 6. I'm in the living room by myself, and I put the VHS copy of The Toxic Avenger I just rented into my VCR. I'm also old enough that my VCR had a remote control that was connected via wire plugged into the VCR itself. I remember when wireless controllers became a thing. Yeah, you younger kids take everything for granted these days, I swear. But anyway, I don't know, about a good 10, 15 so minutes into this movie, a rather large and admittedly glorious pair of breasts present themselves on screen. I don't mean like partial nudity, like side boob or anything. I mean full on, top comes down, breasts are shown in their complete and utter glory, nipples, areolas, the whole shebang. Which I was not expecting, especially at the age of 6, especially from a movie that I was inspired to watch because it was adapted into a Saturday morning kids cartoon show. Take a drink every time I say Saturday morning cartoon show, guys. Might make this more fun. So I'm both shocked and excited because this was not as common an occurrence for me at the age of 6 as it would become later on in life. And it was at that exact moment that my grandmother decided to walk into the living room and see what I had just described to you was on the screen. And she was pissed. Oh man, she was furious. She ran right over to that VCR, turned it off, started yelling, "What the hell are you watching? Your mom and dad know, blah, 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 blah." Oh, exactly what you would expect, right? So naturally, I did not get to watch the rest of that movie. I mean, I've seen it since, but it would be many years later that I would eventually sit down and watch the movie in its entirety. And I love it. I mean, if those of you who aren't familiar with Troma, it's schlock cinema at its absolute finest. We're talking about Class of Nukem High. We're talking Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, The Toxic Avenger, and its 3 sequels: Tromeo and Juliet, Sergeant Kabuki Man. We're talking about low-budget exploitation cinema at its finest. In fact, I even have some friends that have produced films for Troma. And I'll get into that later, probably in another episode, because that really deserves more time devoted to talking to that too. And I'm stoked that they're doing a remake. Now, I hate remakes, right? And why do I hate remakes? Because remakes are more often than not terrible. I mean, there are obviously some exceptions. As much as I love the Infernal Affairs trilogy, The Departed, I firmly believe is a much better film. I'm one of the people that prefers both the 1990 Tom Savini remake of Night of the Living Dead to the original by George Romero, as much as I love George Romero, and the 2004 Zack Snyder remake, Dawn of the Dead, to the original 1978 Dawn of the Dead. I do not prefer the remake of Day of the Dead to the original. I think with the third film in the series, the Romero original is the superior film. And I could probably do another episode devoted just to remakes, why they suck, which ones don't suck, why they shouldn't be done. But the gist of it is I think it's always a terrible idea to remake a good movie. If you're going to remake anything, you should remake a movie that had potential but failed, right? Something that, could have been cool but straight up sucked, right? But there's always exceptions to every rule, and here we're getting another Toxic Avenger movie starring Peter Dinklage. How bad could it be? This film is scheduled to be directed by Macon Blair, director of I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, which I haven't seen it, but I want to say it stars Elijah Wood. And I believe I read in a different article, not the one I currently have in front of me right now, but I want to say I read in a different article that it's available to watch on Netflix, so I might check that out later just to see what it's like. But I could not be more stoked, like absolutely excited. In other news, those of you who have seen The Mandalorian, stick around. If you haven't seen the new episode of The Mandalorian yet, spoiler alert, you might want to hit pause. But honestly, by the time this gets put up on YouTube, which will probably be sometime tomorrow, because I still have to edit stuff, and that takes a long time. If you haven't seen The Mandalorian yet, what the hell is keeping you? Right? I mean, unless you're working like a dog and you're super busy, you just legitimately don't have the time for it, then my apologies. I would pause this and come back to it after you've seen the episode. But, unless you're doing something radically important with your life, I am not. Why the hell haven't you seen this yet? Stop this video, watch it right now, and then come back and finish this. Episode 6 of the second season of The Mandalorian, titled The Tragedy. And honestly, I'm not really sure why that's the title of this episode, but whatever, right? That's not the point. That's not important. What's important is, not only is Boba Fett officially back, and not only is Boba Fett donning his armor again, but finally, Boba Fett is now officially the character that all of you have assumed he was this entire time. That might sound a little condescending, and I guess it's meant to. So, I say it all the time. My two favorite things in life are Star Wars and Raiders football. Well, we're not talking about Raiders football right now. We're talking about Star Wars. Star Wars has been a lifelong obsession of mine. Literally my favorite thing in existence. But I'm not one of those people who just loves it all blindly, right? Like, I hate the prequels. I hate The Last Jedi. I really didn't like Rise of Skywalker. I don't hate the Ewok movies. Granted, I haven't seen them since I was a little kid, but I don't hate them. I've never been a fan of Boba Fett. And I'm not saying I hated Boba Fett. I'm just saying literally one of the biggest fan favorite characters in all of fiction, and I never understood why. If you don't count his debut in the holiday special, and you really shouldn't, I can't stress it enough. If you haven't seen the Star Wars holiday special, do not watch it. By no means. I mean, avoid it at all costs. It is awful. You will not get that time of your life back. I've seen it 3 times, and I can tell you right now, do not watch it. I'm begging you. Don't do it. So officially, I think his debut is The Empire Strikes Back. But originally, and by originally I mean in the original films, the original trilogy, going back to when Star Wars was just the 3 movies, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Some of you guys say, you didn't call Star Wars New Hope, because originally it wasn't called New Hope, it was called Star Wars, all right? So that's what I've always called it. Originally, Boba Fett appeared in limited scenes in 2 films. He might have had maybe 5 minutes total screen time between 2 movies, said a couple lines of dialogue, and all he ever really did was get knocked into the Sarlacc pit accidentally by a blind Han Solo who just got thawed from carbonite freezing. That was it. Now, he looked cool. I love that armor. No denying it. That's one of the coolest looking armors I've ever seen, even to this day, in any kind of science fiction, right? So there's no doubt Boba Fett looked really cool. And there's no doubt that his notoriety, his fame, the love fans have held for him can tend to be a little bit contagious. Again, I've never hated Boba Fett. I was programmed to think, man, Boba Fett is cool, but I just never really understood why. And as I got older, I really started to question it. Why do people love Boba Fett so much? People would give me some examples from the expanding universe. Well, I guess now you can say it's canon, we think. We still don't know what happened to canon Boba Fett, but in the traditional expanding universe, he crawled out of the Sarlacc pit after I don't know how long. Which, that's badass. Because the presumption is nobody survives the Sarlacc pit, right? C-3PO says you will slowly digest over 1,000 years. Don't know how long you will be alive during that time, but the Sarlacc pit will digest you for 1,000 years, for a whole millennia. But that wasn't canon. It might be now, but it wasn't then. Up until this episode, all Boba Fett had ever done in the canon was take a bounty on Han Solo, take him away in Slave One, which is one of the weirdest but coolest looking ships I've ever seen. I'll try to put a graphic up on screen. I say try because if you watch my last video, you'll notice I finally put up like pictures, right? So it's not just a black screen you're looking at. But then I tried to record another video afterwards. Actually, I tried to do my Raider weekly recap, but I couldn't. For some reason, it just would not accept the images that I was putting in the video. So I'm going to try it this time, and I'm going to hope it's successful because I think this is way better than just a black square. You know, I always thought that sucked. I just didn't have the means to do so before. I'm working with almost nothing here, guys. An old beat-up computer and some free recording and editing software. Actually, my editing software is actually still in alpha. It's not even in beta yet. It's still in alpha. But anyway, my point is Boba Fett didn't do shit. Didn't do anything to deserve the fandom he had, other than looked really cool. And when I would talk to fans, they would tell me these stories that either they had read in a non-canon comic book or novel, or maybe played something in a video game, or maybe just came up with these stories themselves as a child with their Boba Fett action figures. And there's nothing wrong with that. I had, basically lived off my imagination as a child. But it's not canon. And until something is canon, it doesn't really mean anything to me. But now, we've got a Boba Fett that finally actually did shit. He did a lot of shit. He took on a shitload of stormtroopers. Shot some of them. Bludgeoned a whole bunch of them. With that thing that sand people have. Remember the last episode I was talking about how I'm a bad nerd? I am a bad nerd. Because I feel like I should know, after all these years, the name of every weapon in Star Wars history, canon or otherwise. But I do not know the name of that thing that the sand people carry around, the Tusken Raiders, right? It's long, it's got like a little hook and a barb at the end. At least I think that's what the Tusken Raiders use, right? Isn't it? I'm going to feel really silly if I go out and find out that this is all in my head. But either way, Boba Fett's got this blunt instrument that he's beating the shit out of stormtroopers with. And then eventually he goes on and puts on the armor. And he continues to lay it out, to fucking throw down with these stormtroopers. And then as the rest of them retreat, and they take off in two separate aircrafts that are taking off adjacent to each other, he did what I can only describe as one of the biggest moments in fan service history. Now, when I say fan service, I hate when people use fan service in a negative context. I mean, albeit there can be examples, and I can even think of Star Wars examples of fan service in a negative context. The whole Reylo thing in Rise of Skywalker was definitely, I think, a negative example of fan service. They forced a romantic relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren simply because fans wanted it, and I thought that was a terrible decision. But that's not the point, right? Point is, nowadays we talk to people and go, oh, it's just fan service. Like, why is that a bad thing? Like, as a fan, I want the things that I want to happen. And you should be making creative decisions with fans' interest in mind. Because if you do the opposite of what the fans want, they're eventually going to lose interest. And then your product is not as profitable anymore. So fan service, in spite of what a lot of nerds and a lot of hipsters like to say, fan service, for lack of a better word, is good. You guys see what I did there? Wall Street. Anyway, older Star Wars fans, older listeners will know that the Boba Fett action figure originally came with a rocket launcher on its back, right? You know, the Boba Fett's got a jetpack. Well, it fired a missile, an RPG, from his back. That, because Boba Fett didn't really do much in the original trilogy, you never got to see that happen. So as these two stormtrooper transports are taking off adjacent to each other, he takes the little mailbox thingy, the little antenna thingy sticking off the right side of his helmet, flips it down. It turns out it's a sight. Bends forward, shoots the missile off, hitting the higher transport, knocking that wreckage into the lower transport, killing both at the same time. It was fucking awesome. Other stuff happened in the episode, other important stuff, but I'm not here to describe the entirety of the episode. I'm here to talk about the fact that in the last 2 weeks, we found out that Ahsoka Tano is still alive, and so is Boba Fett. And now Boba Fett is actually as badass as all of you motherfuckers said he was over the years. As all of you thought he was. As all of you dreamed and imagined he was. And now I get it, guys. Now I love Boba Fett too. Because now I have a reason to. This was awesome. And I can't wait for the next episode of The Mandalorian. Moving on to my final topic. HBO, Warner Brothers, announced this week that due to the pandemic, they will be releasing their entire 2021 film slate on HBO Max the same day that they're released in theaters worldwide, where theaters are still open. Because of the pandemic, not every theater is open. The theater industry is hurting as a result. Movies aren't being released, so the theaters that are open don't have a lot of options to show. Where I live, movie theaters aren't open. But even if they were, I wouldn't go right now. And I wouldn't go because I don't think it's safe. I know drive-ins have been doing decently. And honestly, I'm surprised there haven't been more drive-in theaters open as a result. I would go to a drive-in right now. During Halloween time, Joe Bob was doing I'm going to get some of the details here wrong, so please forgive me if I sound like an idiot. But he was doing basically a traveling driving experience, like a tour. Like it would pop up in different cities. Like, here's Joe Bob. I'm going to show this movie on the drive-in, blah, 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 because it's a safe thing to do. But the closest it came to my area was Los Angeles, and I'm about 6 hours north of LA. And I was not going to drive 6 hours to watch a drive-in movie. As much as I love Joe Bob Briggs, I wasn't going to drive 6 hours just to do that and then come back. It just didn't seem worth it. Now, if he had popped up in San Jose, oh yeah, I'd go to San Jose. That's nothing. It's not even an hour from me. But, I've never actually been to a drive-in theater. I've always wanted to. It's like one of my bucket list things, right? There used to be drive-ins in my town, but that was before I was born. I think they got converted to parks or something. I don't know. I think there's still a drive-in theater in San Jose, but I've never been. I think it still exists. I think up until the pandemic it was still open. But I'm a movie nerd. Very passionate, hardcore movie nerd, and it bothers me that I've never had the drive-in experience, especially considering I am such a big fan of one Joe Bob Briggs, and that is his entire identity, the drive-in movie critic, right? If I survive this pandemic, that's what I want to do. Once it becomes accessible, and really once a movie worth watching is shown, I want to go to a drive-in. It can be an older movie, it can be a new movie, but something that makes me go, oh, I need to see that on the big screen. This move by Warner Brothers, as far as I can tell, is similar to their decision to release Wonder Woman 1984 on Christmas Day on HBO Max in areas where people don't have open theaters, and in theaters where theaters are open. And I had to go and find a couple other articles. I found an article from Decider that confirmed me, yes, according to the director, Patty Jenkins, while in theaters where it is made safe to do so, and available in the safety of your own home on HBO Max where it is not. That is a direct quote from the director. I'm not seeing anything here that says that the release of the full slate of 2021 Warner Brothers films is going to have that restriction where theaters are open, you can watch them in theaters. I mean, you can. But there's nothing here that says that it will not be on HBO Max where theaters are open. Whereas, again, if I'm not clear enough, Wonder Woman will be on HBO Max in places like California, for example, where movie theaters are not open. And in places where movie theaters are open, you have to go watch it in the movie theater if you want to see it. Which actually makes a lot of sense to me. I know a lot of people are upset about that, but I don't really see what the big issue is, and I'll get to that in a minute. So, if I'm reading this correctly, though, for their 2021 films, they will hit HBO Max the same day that they hit movie theaters, but you can, my understanding is you can still watch them on HBO Max in areas where movie theaters are open. I'm not seeing anything that says that's not true, so at the moment I'm just going to run with that. Because they were very specific about Wonder Woman 1984, but not for the rest of these. And we might get more information later on that is more clear about this. So I could be wrong. But here's why I don't think this is a bad thing. This is why I don't think this is as upsetting as or should be as upsetting as apparently it is. HBO Max is not free. You have to pay for HBO Max. $14.99 a month. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, What if I just sign up for a free trial? Well, you can't do that anymore because after making this move, they announced they were ending their free trials. Now, if you want to watch these films, and these films include, I'm going to go in order, Mortal Kombat on January 15th, The Little Things on January 29th, starring Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto, Tom and Jerry on March 5th, The Sopranos prequel, which I'm very excited about, The Many Saints of Newark on March 12th, a Hugh Jackman and Thandie Newton film called Reminiscence on April 16th, Godzilla vs. Kong on May 21st, another Conjuring sequel on June 4th, In the Heights on June 18th, which is another film adaptation of a film adaptation of a Lin-Manuel Miranda musical. The new Space Jam movie on July 16th, the new Suicide Squad on August 6th, the movie I'm most excited about, Dune, on October 1st. Holy shit, there's an Elvis movie? With Tom Hanks? There's an Elvis movie. With Tom Hanks as the Colonel. Holy shit. That's coming out on November 5th. A King Richard movie starring Will Smith. Oh, I apologize. The movie's called King Richard, but it's about Venus and Serena Williams' father. That we're getting a movie about King Richard starring Will Smith. That's coming out November 19th. Matrix 4 on December 22nd. Judas and the Black Messiah starring Daniel Kaluuya, to be announced. A James Wan film called Malignant that I'm going to assume is a horror movie, but there's not a lot of information. That's to be announced. A Taylor Sheridan film called Those Who Wish Me Dead. I like Taylor Sheridan. I like Taylor Sheridan's films quite a lot. Hell or High Water and Wind River, I believe, were his last two films, and both of them are absolutely 100 must watches. I highly recommend. But this stars Angelina Jolie, Nicholas Hoult, Tyler Perry, and John Bernthal. So even though there's not a lot of information on this and we don't have a release date, I mean, I'm already sold in this movie. So my understanding is we'll all get to watch them for free, assuming we have a subscription to HBO Max. And at $14.99, it's not that much different than the price of a movie ticket. I also understand that there's some kind of agreement in place where Warner Brothers will share some form of profit, some form of monies generated with the various theater chains. Don't quote me on that. I don't have that information in front of me at the moment, but I want to say I read that the other day when this was all first announced. I mean, but there's no doubt about it. This is going to result in less potential money overall for everyone involved. But considering the world we're in right now, and I get it, there's a lot of people who still don't want to shelter in place, who still just want to go out and just do what they normally do. There are still people out there who are still going out to bars and restaurants and are partying and yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's movie theaters that are still open. And a lot of people are claiming this is going to kill Hollywood. This is going to kill the theater industry. And I disagree with that to a very big extent. Whereas this could potentially, if this takes off, if this is a very successful thing for Warner Brothers and other studios do this, and it results in a complete just negative in the red for movie theater chains, which is possible, but I would not go as far as say it's a guarantee, but it's possible. If that happens and theaters go out of business as a result, I'm not going to blame Warner Brothers for this. It might have been the final nail in the coffin, but let's be real about something. I'm a 36-year-old lifelong film nerd. I remember the very first time I ever stepped foot into a movie theater. I remember the second time I ever stepped foot into a movie theater. These are very memorable experiences for me that were very defining in my life. I was born on August 10th, 1984. 3 days prior to my 3rd birthday, Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren, Courtney Cox, James Tolkien. Is that how his last name's pronounced? The principal from Back to the Future. I don't remember, but I'm a slacker. That's not the point. Was released. And being a big He-Man fan at the time, it was a must. That's what I wanted to do for my birthday. I had to do that for my birthday. I needed to see this movie. My entire life at that point revolved around this moment. So my parents took me to go see Masters of the Universe for my 3rd birthday. It was the first time I'd ever stepped foot into a movie theater. Now say what you will about that movie. I don't care that it's bad. I'm aware that it's bad. I'm aware of why it's bad. I just don't give a fuck. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. And maybe it's because I can see something in it that a lot of other people can't. Considering that it's gaining quite a lot of cult status, I don't think that's the case. But maybe I just see something special in it that a lot of other people don't. It was not a successful film. It lost money in the box office. And eventually led to the downfall of Canon Films. Don't believe me? There's a fantastic documentary on it called Electric Boogaloo that I highly recommend watching because it is absolutely hilarious. And all true. It's actually what makes it so funny. But maybe it's also that I can still feel everything I felt that day, that August weekend in 1987. Every time I watch this movie, and I watch this movie often, I don't think I've gone an entire calendar year between viewings of Masters of the Universe. I've seen the movie more than I've ever seen a single episode or just the cartoon in general. I'm not saying it's the best interpretation of Masters of the Universe. It very obviously is a poor adaptation of Masters of the Universe. Has very little to do with Masters of the Universe, actually. The filmmaker will go on and confess that he was actually secretly trying to get a Jack Kirby New Gods movie made. And if you think about the movie in regards of that context, if you think of Skeletor as Darkseid, and if you think of He-Man as Orion, the movie does admittedly make a little bit more sense, but that's not the point. Every single time I watch this movie, and I've been watching this movie for 33 years, every single time I feel everything that I felt that first time I saw it in 1987, which was my very first film-going experience. The movie-going experience is a very big deal to me. I remember the second time I ever saw a movie in theaters, 1989. I hadn't turned 5 quite yet. Me, my dad, and my mom were in line in that moment we were in line to buy tickets to see Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. I hear the people in front of me ask for 2 tickets for Batman. I had no idea there was a Batman movie because back at that time we didn't have internet, and so you had to either be actively watching TV a lot or reading the entertainment magazines or going to the movies to know what movies were coming out. As a child, if I didn't see a commercial for it on TV, I didn't know it existed. And admittedly, I was very excited about seeing Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade because, like a lot of us, I've always been a huge Indiana Jones fan. In much of the Star Wars nerd as I might be, I actually prefer the character of Indiana Jones to the character of Han Solo, and that's a discussion for another day. But when I heard those people ahead of us asked for, let me get 2 tickets for Batman, I freaked the fuck out. Right there in the box office line. There was a Batman movie? I look at my parents. We have to see the Batman movie. We have to. Oh my God. My dad looked at me and he smiled. And then when it was our turn in line, I hear him say, let me get 3 for Batman. So we saw Batman. I'm talking about the 1989, Tim Burton directed, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Kim Basinger starring Batman. Another one of my favorite movies of all time. The following weekend, we would go back and watch Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, and that's actually my favorite of the Indiana Jones movies. I don't know what your favorite is. As long as it's not Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there's no wrong answer. If your favorite Indiana Jones movie is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, shut the fuck up. No, it's not. My fourth experience in a movie theater. I was in kindergarten when the Ninja Turtles movie came out. And this I happened to be very excited about because I remember getting mailed to me in the mail some sort of Ninja Turtles magazine, right? I don't know if it was a regular thing or if it was just like a one-time thing my parents ordered for me, or maybe it was a promotional thing they sent out to people. I don't know. All I know is in the mail I got this Ninja Turtles magazine, and I, like a lot of us, was obsessed with Ninja Turtles at the time too, right? And I, reading this whole thing completely front to back. When I get to the very back cover was a poster for the movie. And I'm going to try to see if I can find it and put it up on here. But if I can't find it, I'm going to scrap it to you. The poster that was featured on the back cover of this magazine had a shot from the street, dead center, like lower center, just above the credits, was an open manhole cover, and you can see portions of the 4 turtles, their fingers, their masks, their eyes, poking out of the manhole. And then up top, it said Ninja Turtles. You can see this is in the middle of the street, so there's buildings on either side. It's coming March 30th or whatever, end of March, right, when it said it was coming out. So I knew there was a movie and when it was coming out. And I forget how far back this was before. It could have been a month before, because when you're a little kid, everything seems like it's forever, right? So this might have been something that I saw the month prior. It might have been something I saw several months prior. All I knew was I could not wait for that day. So as that day starts to come, as that day came, I demanded, begged, pleaded with my parents, we have to go watch this movie tonight. And we did. Or we tried to anyway. Friday night, movie theater. New movie just came out. A hit movie at that. So as we're waiting in line to buy our tickets, I see a friend of mine leaving the theater. A friend of mine from school, from kindergarten. And I say, hey, what did you see? He said, I just saw Ninja Turtles. It was awesome. So I'm incredibly excited. Could not be more excited. Like, I'm minutes away from watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We get to the front of the line. My dad says, let me get 3 tickets for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We are sold out. I am devastated. All the excitement and passion I just felt had just turned into complete and utter dread. I was devastated. I was heartbroken. How could this be? My friend just saw it. Why can't I see it? And my parents look at me and say, oh, we'll have to try again tomorrow. But I couldn't do that. Tomorrow was all the way tomorrow. I needed to watch this now. I had to watch it now, and I would not take no for an answer. Well, it turns out I didn't have a choice but to take no for an answer. And the rest of the night, it was just the worst night of my life at that point. I was crushed, depressed. Woe is me. How could it be that I am denied this movie? And I got to wait till tomorrow? My parents assured me, we'll see it first thing in the morning. But who knows how long that's going to be? Again, I don't have a choice. So, I ride out the rest of the night. Somehow manage to go to sleep. And I wake up the next morning excited as all fuck. Because now we're going to go and watch Ninja Turtles. And we did. We did. And it was incredible. You guys ever seen that movie? Fucking love the movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And much like Masters of the Universe, every single time I watch this movie, I remember exactly how I felt that day in the movie theater. First time I ever saw a movie actually get a standing ovation. Because that's what happened when it was over. We all stood up, clapped, cheered, hooted, hollered, the whole shebang. So as I explained to you guys, I'm trying to explain to you guys, my love for the movie-going experience. I passionately love the movie-going experience. Everything is better on the big screen. There is not a single movie you will ever see in your life that is not better on the big screen. And I can say that from a variety of different experiences, having seen something first on the big screen and then later on at home, and it being a different experience. The very first Transformers live action movie, the Michael Bay, Shia LaBeouf Transformers movie, I actually really liked it in theaters. I tried watching it at home, on Blu-ray no less, and I fucking hated it. It was a radically different experience. There are movies that I didn't quite enjoy watching at home. So, we're all familiar with Rambo. Now, when most people think of Rambo, they're actually thinking of the second movie, Rambo First Blood Part 2, which is my favorite of the now 5 films. But of the original set, I'm not talking about the one that came out last year that was god-awful. I always thought the first one was kind of dull. Like, it's an important film. It's a drama, right? But I always thought it was kind of boring, and I would watch it when it was on, but I was never too crazy about it. Well, around 2008, I got a chance to see it on the big screen for the first time. Now, this is a movie I'd seen plenty of times. I didn't hate it. It's one of those things where, when I'd be watching the Rambo movies, okay, you watch this one to get an understanding of the character, and then you watch the rest of them because you enjoy the rest, right? But watching First Blood on the big screen, it was a completely different film to me, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And really, anytime I had the opportunity to watch something on the big screen, like an older film, that I never got to watch before on the big screen, either something I missed or something that was released before I was born, I took it. Fathom Events played a big part in that. I've been fortunate enough to see things like Roman Holiday, Singing in the Rain, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, Night of the Living Dead, just to name a few that I've seen in recent years. On the big screen that I never got to see before. Obviously, they're all before my time. I took a film class where we studied film history from 1890 to 1960. So we watched stuff like Citizen Kane on the big screen because in the classroom, we actually had a very large screen and a projector. So I got to see M, The Postman Always Rings Twice, Metropolis, Lady from Shanghai, a variety of different films for on the big screen because we studied them, right? And there just is no beating that. There is none. And I'm going to watch these movies on HBO Max at home because it's the safer option. Not because it's my preferred option, but because it is the safer option. Because even once vaccines start rolling out, and for the record, I'm very pro-vaccine. I will be getting the vaccine as soon as I am legally able to do so. But a lot of people aren't. And here's the thing about the future we're facing. Vaccines aren't completely 100% effective. And the less people that take them, the less effective they really are. So even once vaccines roll out, and I have taken the full course of vaccines, I don't know how eager I'm going to be to go back to watch movies in the cinemas because it's just not going to be completely safe. It's not going to be safe until this pandemic is completely and utterly behind us. I don't mean when numbers start to dip, because we've seen that in other countries where, their new case numbers are so low, they try going back to normal and then bam, cases rise, right? I mean, once this pandemic is completely and utterly over. And I don't know when that's going to be. And apparently, neither does Warner Brothers, because they are releasing their entire slate of films for the next year on HBO Max. But the movie-going experience in recent years, at least from my perspective, has been pretty bad. It's not what it used to be. And first and foremost, I blame it on the studios. Each year, there's less and less movies I'm excited for, right? There's more and more movies that come out from major studios that are just, frankly, bad. I mean, I get it. You guys all love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And actually, the last 2 Avengers films are quite literally the 2 highest grossing movies ever made. They were making $1 billion a week. That's unprecedented. And if you only think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you might think, well, no, Hollywood is still cranking out hit movies. That's one studio. And those are a couple movies a year. Each year, Hollywood complains about they're making less and less money. And instead of looking at themselves, pointing the fingers at themselves to blame, they're blaming other things. Oh, well, streaming services. People aren't going to the movie theaters anymore because you have all these options streaming. Netflix is not the reason that people stop going to movie theaters. And that's a dumb excuse because, at present time, Netflix isn't showing things in Netflix that you would go watch on the big screen. Not while they're in theaters, anyway. But it used to be I would go to the movies every single week. And I mean every weekend I would go see at least one movie. Sometimes more than one. Because there was a lot of things that I wanted to see out in theaters. In the last couple of years, I wouldn't even go once a month. Because there just wasn't that much out there that I'm like, oh man, I need to see this. In fact, most of the movies that have been produced by major studios in the last couple of years, I've thought have looked like shit. I mean, there's obviously exceptions, right? Like the last movie I saw in theaters was 1917, and that was a complete masterpiece, right? There's obviously exceptions, but there just wasn't a lot of movies that I was like, I need to see this on the big screen. I have to see this, right? This is a must watch. But also, how many theaters out there have switched from traditional theater seats to the luxury recliner seats? My local theaters have. And in one regard, they might seem nice. They're comfortable seats. I mean, they're very comfortable seats. Leather-bound, reclining. Got nice cup holders. They have a tray you can swivel out so you can put your food onto, but they're also big. And they don't feel... I mean, it doesn't feel like I'm in a theater when I'm sitting in them, right? It's not the traditional chairs that I grew up with. Like when you're going to the movie theater, here's your chair, right? I mean, that might sound silly, but that is part of the experience for me. And so sitting in these chairs, and they've got their pros, obviously. I mean, again, they're comfortable. They're convenient. They also separate you a good distance from people, which means I now no longer have to worry about the asshole in front of me blocking my view. I also now no longer have to worry about the asshole behind me kicking my seat. So there's pros, obviously, but there's cons too. One, because of that, they're also significantly less intimate. Now, I would often go to the movie theaters by myself. I don't have a problem with that. But over the past decade, most likely, if I was going to, more often than not, when I went to the movies, I would be with my girlfriend. Now, when I say intimate, I don't necessarily mean like, oh man, we would go to movies to make out, right? I mean, I did that when I was younger, but as an adult, not quite so much. But there still was something very special, right? Especially when the theater saw those seats where you can lift up the armrest. There's still something very special and intimate about watching a movie to your significant other close enough where you can either be holding their hand, or you can put your arm around them, or you can conveniently share food, drinks, the whole nine, right? You can't do that with these luxury seats. There's a big space, there's a big armrest in between the two of you, and there's enough of a distance to where, so my girlfriend likes to hold the popcorn. She likes holding on to it. That's her. So when we go watch a movie, she's the one who holds the popcorn. And before the luxury seats, I would lift up the armrest, lean towards her, and just reach conveniently into the big bucket of popcorn, because we always got a large. No problem. With these luxury seats, I would have to noticeably lean and move towards her, move in her direction. It wasn't just, I couldn't reach with my arm anymore. I had to physically move my upper body, right? And to do that regularly with popcorn, it just became more convenient, where I would just get my own little tray and just every once in a while fill it up with popcorn and let her hold the bucket of popcorn. That might not sound like a big deal to you, but it is to me, because it takes away some of the intimacy of going and watching a movie with your significant other. And that's a big deal to me. The going to a movie isn't just going to watch a movie, right? Because you can easily just do that. You can do that at home, right? That's kind of what we're talking about, isn't it? But that shared experience with somebody you care about is a big deal. Now, we would still go to the movies, and we still had this shared experience. It just, this now shared experience is slightly less intimate, and that always bothered me. With the luxury seats came the assigned seating, and that really pissed me off. I absolutely hate assigned seating in a movie theater. One, because there isn't actually a person to check, right? So you might buy a seat, but there isn't anyone there to actually enforce that anyone sits there, which creates very obvious problems, and it did for me more than once. Two, lots of places have assigned seating. You go to a concert, you go to a sporting event, it's going to have assigned seating. Yeah. But A, they actually have people who enforce the seating. B, the reason they do is because if seating is assigned, you pay different prices depending on the quality of your seat. So if I don't get my tickets on time, and with the modern world, I stopped going to buy tickets in the box office once Fandango became convenient. I would buy my tickets online. Lots of people do. So now it became a matter of, now I have to buy tickets as soon as they become available. And in a lot of movies, they become available a month or two away from release, which means now I have to plan this more carefully. And when you're an adult with a variety of different responsibilities, you don't always have a lot of time to just go, oh, hey, we're going to watch a movie this time. Let's go, hey, do you want to go watch? I remember when Black Panther came out. And that's when we started doing assigned seating in my neck of the woods. And this was my first experience with the problem of the assigned seating. If it's a movie I'm really excited about, I like to go see it opening night. Right, I kind of stopped doing the midnight thing because, again, you get older, responsibilities, you can't always just stay out late at night. But my goal was always to see it the Friday night of release, right? If I couldn't see it at a convenient time the Thursday night before. And I remember when they announced, okay, our local theaters were doing assigned seating, it was about 2 weeks before Black Panther was coming out, and I really wanted to see Black Panther. So now I'm like, hey, do you want to see Black Panther too? She says, yes. I said, okay, I'm going to go buy tickets right now. What time would work for Friday? She goes, well, I don't know. I don't know what we got going on that time. And I'm like, oh, yes, there's an issue. We might have something like either family related or something important that might prevent us from going to watch it at certain times. We don't know what time we're going to be available at this point. So she's, let me figure it out. So as I keep every day going, okay, well, we need to figure it out because we want to watch this movie. I need to buy tickets now. And I love her. She still doesn't get that. Like, we can't just randomly, because forever we would just randomly go. We would literally just go, hey, you want to go see a movie today? Let's go see what's playing. But you can't do that anymore, because you're either A, not going to be able to get tickets to a good movie, or B, not going to get seats anywhere other than the front row. And nobody wants to see a movie in the front row, right? And that's kind of where I'm getting at. So we couldn't watch Black Panther because by the time we knew when we were going to be available, it was too late. And we're talking, this is like a week before. It was too late. Tickets were sold out for that Friday night showing. So we went Saturday. I was able to still get tickets for Saturday. But now you're forcing me to plan this ahead of time around my schedule, because in addition to the fact that now tickets are assigned seating, there's also significantly less seats in a movie theater because the luxury seats take up so much space. Like, let me give you an example. At my local theater, before the luxury seats, the big auditorium would house about 400 something seats. And it was regular for those to sell out. Now, that same auditorium houses about 90 seats. And if you eliminate the D-box seats, which is usually about 4 some odd rows, because that's a different kind of seat that you have to pay a higher price for. And I don't do D-box because that does not enhance the movie-going experience for me. I don't want to pay twice as much to have speakers in my ear and my seat shake, right? No, that's dumb. But if you take those out, you're looking at maybe 70. So let's say we're going from about 400 seats in this auditorium to now 70 seats. That means your chances of getting a ticket are now significantly less, which means you really have to plan ahead of time. Now, like I said, there's nobody there to enforce the tickets, right? To make sure everyone's in the right seat. You just buy a ticket, you pick your seat, and it's just the honor system. And so now, even though I have my assigned seat, I've paid for my seat, I still have to get there early enough to avoid any potential drama. And let me explain what I mean by any potential drama. Numerous times in the last few years, since this has started, I have gotten my seats. And maybe I picked the specific seats for a specific reason. Like, I went to go watch Night of the Living Dead with my dad. And my dad's got a bum knee. So we picked seats as close to the ground level as we can. Not the front level, but when you walk in, that first row right next to the stairs that go upwards, pick seats right there because my dad can't walk all the way up. I always prefer sitting far back, like as far back as you can. Get a good view of the theater, everything. The back row is always my preferred thing, but with my dad there, that was not an option. But none of us want to sit in the front section because the front section sucks. So I picked seats that were super convenient to where he didn't have to go up more than a couple of steps, and he could sit there because he's got a bum knee. Moving up steps is a problem. We get there. There's these women there. I tell them, ma'am, I apologize if you're sitting in our seats. They sort of give me attitude. Well, we were here first. I understand, ma'am, but these are assigned seats, and I paid for these seats specifically, and you are sitting in our seats. Well, what do you want us to do? I would like for you to get out of the seat that I paid for. No, these are our seats. I pull out my ticket. No, ma'am, I'm in row D, seats 4 and 5. We got seats 4 and 5. Yes, ma'am, but you're in row J. Well, so? This isn't row J. This is row D. These are our seats. Well, what do you want to do? Go up there? I'm like, ma'am, I'll be honest with you. I don't really care what you do, but if you don't get out of my seat, I'm going to go get the manager, and I'll let him deal with this. He gave me attitude to continue, but they got it. We don't want any trouble. We'll let you have these seats. No, ma'am, you won't let me have nothing. I purchased these. You did not. And that was one of the more pleasant examples of this. It got worse. When me and my girlfriend went to go see Avengers Endgame. Infinity War, sorry, the first one. The first of those two, I mean. we actually bought our tickets far enough advance to where not a single seat had sold when I bought my tickets, when I bought our tickets, right? I literally had the pick of the litter. All seats were available. And like I said, my preferred is always back row in the absolute center. I think they are the best seats in the house in any movie theater. That is my preference. So not only did I buy these 2 seats before anyone else had bought their seats, we actually got there early. I convinced her to get there early. We can get popcorn and everything, sit down the whole night comfortably, and maybe even just talk before the movie starts, right? So we're there. There's not that many people there by the time we get there. But before the movie starts, a couple sits down next to us, and I don't think nothing of it at the time, right? They just sit down. As far as I'm concerned, those are their seats. 20 minutes into the movie. 20 minutes. Movie's been. I don't mean the trailers. I mean the movie has been playing for 20 minutes. Thanos' people have already been attacking New York City, right? A family of 4 gets up, or walks into the theater, gets up to our row, and very loudly yells at the people next to me, "Hey, these are our seats. We paid for them. We bought these. You're in our seats." They didn't quietly, like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, but we think you've been a mention saying you've been in our seat, blah, blah." No, they're yelling at them, right? The movie's playing. People are trying to watch the movie, and this family of 4 that showed up 20 minutes late yelling at these people that they're in their seats. Now, they were in this family's seats. That is very accurate. The family, the very angry, upset, irate family, had a reason to be upset. What I'm saying is that since the movie was playing, you would have liked to have had a little more courtesy to everyone else watching the movie, and then we just kind of quietly just say, "Hey guys, you're in our seats. Can you please get out of our seats? We bought these tickets." They didn't do it. They were yelling at them. They caused a scene, which caused the couple next to us to argue, no, these were their seats. It was not. That was not their seats at all. So they pull out their tickets, they get their phones out to light it up, looking, and they realize, oh, these aren't in our seats. Well, that couple then turns to me and my girlfriend and says, "You guys are in our seats." And I said, no, we're not. And I wanted to leave it at that, because if they just looked at their goddamn tickets, they would know that they weren't even in the right row. And I was trying to watch the movie. And this was making me very mad. They sat there and proclaimed, no, these are our seats. We're in seats 6 and 7. I forget the number, but let's just say 6 and 7. And I pull out my ticket. Said, nope, I'm in 6 and 7. Row, whatever, J, right? And they show me, no, we're in these seats. And I said, well, I look at their tickets and go, oh, you got the number right, but you got the row wrong. It's very similar to the woman from Night of the Living Dead. Like, what do you mean? I said, this is row J. You see my ticket? Row J, seat 6. This is row J. We're in row J right now. You can see it on the floor. He goes, yeah. I mean, you see where you're in row A? He's like, what do you mean? Your ticket says row A. Well, where's that? I'm going to take a shot in the dark and assume it's all the way in the front of the theater. And then he has this dumbfounded look on his face. Oh. And then he looks at me and says, what am I supposed to do? I said, I would suggest you go sit in your seat. But get the fuck out of here. I'm trying to watch the movie. Those of you who know me know I didn't like that movie. I don't like most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's some exceptions. I love Doctor Strange. I love Black Panther. But I hate Avengers Infinity War. I hate Avengers Endgame. But the only thing I hated more than that movie is when people interrupt me when I'm watching a goddamn movie. Because even if I don't like the movie, if I'm watching it, I'm watching it. And if you're interrupting that, that's going to upset me. But this is now the normality of my modern day movie going experience. This would be a regular thing for me now. I've seen fistfights in front of me during a movie over a seat. Because someone purchased a seat, another person didn't want to get up out of that seat and go to where they were supposed to be. And as I mentioned, there is nobody in the theater to enforce the seating rules. You might buy that seat, but anyone can just sit wherever the hell they want. And if you want to sit in that seat, if you don't want to take someone else's seat, potentially, by going sitting somewhere else, you are now forced to go potentially cause a scene by getting the manager involved. Now, some of you, that might not be that big of a deal. But I happen to live in a very violent area where that kind of stuff could get you pretty seriously hurt after the fact, right? Let's say, hypothetical, I'm there and I'm with my girlfriend. And we have our assigned seats. When we get there and there's somebody else sitting in our assigned seats. Let's say this person is not a very well-adjusted person. Let's say they're rather violent. They're a very violent type, right? Potentially. Hypothetical. I ask him, hey, these are our seats. Can you get out? He tells me to go fuck myself. Again, if I go sit somewhere else, I'm potentially sitting in somebody else's seat. I now have to go and get the manager. Because if I go sit in someone else's seat, they can do the very same thing to me. And then I get kicked out, right? So now I'm forced to be, okay, I'm going to go get the manager. Now let's say I go get the manager. They kick that guy out. Let's say, again, this is the violent type. Maybe he's got a gun. I don't know. Maybe he's not that well adjusted. Maybe he's psychotic. And maybe he's waiting for me and my girlfriend outside of the theater, just waiting for the movie to come out. And let's say he's pretty raw about all this. And let's say he wants to take it out by shooting me. This kind of shit happens. So now, obviously prior to the pandemic, when I would go to the movies, it would be because I really, really wanted to see this. This was a big deal to me. I have to see this movie. Not any more of a, oh, this looks cool, let me go see if it's worth watching. Or maybe kind of sort of, I don't know, I might be willing to go see it. No, now when I go to the movies, I have to be passionately excited about it. I need to see this movie. And in the last few years, the number of films I passionately need to see on the big screen is becoming fewer and fewer because Hollywood has been cranking out a lot of shit. There have just not been a lot of good movies have been released in the last few years. And if you don't believe me, just look at the film slates from the last few years and tell me I'm wrong. Again, there's exceptions. I really wanted to see Dune on the big screen. I'm not going to anymore, but I really wanted to. But my point I'm getting at, and I realize I took a long time getting to this point. I didn't want this to be as long as this actually was. I have a lot to say. Don't blame Warner Brothers for putting their entire film slate on Max. I know a lot of people were actually upset that, okay, Disney released Mulan, but you had to pay $30 to watch it, even if you had Disney Plus. Well, that was shitty of Disney to do. That really was. Especially because we all knew that it was going to be available for free on Disney Plus at a later date, which that date arrived yesterday. But don't blame Warner Brothers for that. First, blame Hollywood for, over the years, ruining the film-going experience by making it inconvenient to watch films and then making the films that were available to watch unappealing. Blame the studios for not generating good movies anymore. But more importantly, do not blame Warner Brothers for deciding that what was in the best interest of their studio was to release their entire slate of films on HBO Max the same day that they're in theaters. When the real issue is this pandemic has gotten so out of hand because people refuse to wear masks and they refuse to socially distance themselves. That is the real reason why movie theaters are going to go out of business. Not because of a decision by a movie studio, but because the number of people who either don't care about ending the pandemic, don't believe that they're going to get sick and whatever, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I'm young. I'm going to be fine. I'm still going to go out and do everything I always do. Or flat out don't believe that the pandemic is real. This is why movie theaters are going to go out of business. This is why we still don't know when the next NHL season is going to start. This is why when the upcoming NBA season starts in a few weeks, there's going to be problems. This is why the NCAA men's basketball season has got off to a rocky start. This is why they've talked about potentially ending the NFL season short because the virus is spreading. People are not doing what is necessary to slow down the spread of the virus. And granted, there are much bigger issues at hand than the sports and entertainment concerns I've just expressed, right? People are dying. People are dying, and yet people still aren't doing the bare necessity to slow this down. We're not asking people to do a lot. Wear a mask, socially distance. People don't want to do that. And that's why movie theaters are going out of business. Not because Warner Brothers decided to do something that was in the best interest of their company and their fans. But y'all don't want to hear that, huh? But like I said, I don't see myself stepping into a movie theater anytime in the near future. And even when everything does eventually get under control and this pandemic is behind us, I have no idea how I'm even going to feel about going into a movie theater. Maybe I'll feel comfortable. Maybe I'll be thinking to myself, but what if? What if the next pandemic is right in front of us and there's some asshole that's sick and doesn't want to wear a mask and is spreading it in a movie theater? What if I get sick with something else at a movie theater? And I don't think I'm going to be the only person thinking that. Who knows? Maybe when this is all over, I might feel comfortable going to a movie theater again. Maybe when this is all over, I won't have the luxury of having a movie theater nearby to go to. Who knows? But all I know is I'm excited about the fact that I'm going to be able to watch these movies at home safely. I mean, it's not going to be the same. Dune was, in spite of the fact that I said the number of movies that are coming out, the number of movies I'm excited about being released every year is getting slimmer and slimmer. Dune was still something I was incredibly excited about. And yes, I would prefer to watch that on a big goddamn IMAX screen. But I will settle for this. Like I said, this has gone on for way longer than I expected it to. If you've made it the entire hour and a half, although I might trim some of this down. I say a lot and have a lot of dead air, so who knows how long this is going to be when it's done editing. But at the moment, I've been talking for an hour and 28 minutes. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, shelter in place, wear a mask. For the love of God, stay indoors and be safe. And enjoy the rest of your day.